Welcome to the Analyst at the Ashes with me, Simon Hughes, and today, because Simon Mann is not well, I have a special guest, Simon Wilde, another Simon from the Sunday Times and Daily Times too, to give us his thoughts on the day's play. I've taken this shot today, Simon, because there's a Christmas tree behind us, and it felt like Christmas had come early today for both teams because there was so many kind of loose shots and giving away wickets and then giving away runs. It felt like a day when neither team really grabbed hold of the day. In the end, Australia finished on 326 for 8. It just felt like a sort of day where everyone was being quite generous, both the bowlers and the batsmen. I mean, who do you think has ended the day on top?
That's a good question. It was quite even, but I think England would be pretty happy considering that Australia won the toss, bat first. You as a bowling team, you might fear that they would get they would end up scoring 500 in this innings. And if you look at Australia's record batting first here in daytime test matches in the last 15 years, they've almost always got 500 or even 600. Yeah. The only time they didn't was the test here in 2010-11 when England won the series, and England bowled them out amazingly with great drama for 245, I think, and Australia were 2 for 3 at the start. So that match aside, Australia have racked up big scores here. So in the context of what's happened before, I'd say England haven't done too badly, but we can discuss the things they did wrong, but they did pretty well overall, I reckon.
Yeah, even though actually the only bowler who really came out of it with much credit was Jofra Archer, who bowled superbly. Now, just to give you a sense of what the Betfair odds say, when Australia were 144 for 4, so the game was in the balance today, it was 62% Australia and 30% England. By the end of the day, when Australia 325 for 8, it had gone up to Australia marginally more, 65%, and England just 29. So it's a slight shift during the day's play. At the start of play, it was around about that sort of figure as well. I thought with Steve Smith suddenly being excluded from the team, that it may have just given England that bit of a lift, actually. And then obviously Australia won the toss, so perhaps that cancelled out the Smith loss because they had first use of the pitch. I thought it was a pretty good pitch, actually. I thought it looked good. And by the way, just to say, we're now at 7:30 at night in Adelaide, and it's still roasting hot. So it was a great day to bat today because it was so hot.
And England will want to bat tomorrow, obviously, get these last 2 wickets quickly and enjoy a good batting day tomorrow, because I think the temperature tomorrow is going to be even higher than it was today, sort of high 30s. So it's going to be hard work for the bowlers. Australia having first advantage is obviously problematic for England later in the game, possibly with Lyon around. And there was a little bit of turn for Will Jacks today, wasn't there? Which sort of contributed to Khawaja's dismissal in the end. I think he got out the ball after one had just beaten him on the outside edge. So, yeah, we've got to factor in the fact Australia are batting first. But anyway, yes, I think England will be reasonably content, I think.
Okay. Well, TNT, of course, have the exclusive rights to this series back home in England. And we'll hear from one of their commentators, Graeme Swann, a little bit later about how he felt Will Jacks bowled today. TNT, of course, have the live coverage. You can get to TNT by going to EE, Virgin Media or Sky, or Discovery. You can get it on Discovery Plus as well. You can stream it there. Of course, you must have a subscription. You need to be over 18 at least. So, I mean, I suppose you've written today in the Times about Usman Khawaja, haven't you? Who probably would have thought before today that his Test career was over. I noticed in the sort of pre-match run-up, he was pictured. And he practiced a lot. He had a long net. Good on him, actually, because he wasn't in the side. He probably wasn't expecting to play until Smith withdrew at the last minute. And what do you pick up from what caused Smith's omission in the end?
Well, he was unwell on Monday. Missed training on Monday. Dizziness and nausea. This is something he's had before. Yesterday, better day. Batted twice, I think, in the nets. But we've been told he wasn't 100%. But clearly he wasn't feeling right this morning when he got up. He went to the nets, had an early net, probably just to test himself out, and then we saw him walk onto the field at about an hour and 45 before, no, an hour and a quarter before the start of the game, 8:45, and he had a chat with Andrew McDonald, and you could see from his body language that he was not happy at all, and basically he was telling McDonald, I think, look, I've had a bat and I feel grim. I can't, I don't think I can play. And at that point, obviously Khawaja was in. Khawaja was having a net, I think, at the time. So I think obviously Khawaja would have been told there's a possibility here you might play, but he wouldn't have known for sure, I think, until about 8:45, which is 75 minutes before the start of the match. So it's an interesting situation which we have encountered occasionally in the past.
Glenn McGrath treading on the ball.
Exactly, Glenn McGrath treading on the ball at Edgbaston, and then I think Michael Kasparovich is the guy who played in that instance, so he wouldn't have expected to play. In fact, funnily enough, one of the guys who's playing in this match went through a very similar experience. Will Jacks made his Test debut in Rawalpindi. There was a virus going through the England team. A lot of people were unwell, and they knocked on the doors of the players at 6 a.m. that morning and said,
"Who's okay?
Are you able to play?"
And
most people said yes, but Ben Folkes was feeling rough, and I think went to the ground and did some sort of running and stuff, and then he said, I can't play. So Jacks had an hour's notice for that game, and that was his Test debut. And he had a really good game. He got 50-odd runs in the match, he got 6 wickets, and England won a sensational victory. So it does happen occasionally, but not that often, does it really?
Anyway, you wrote about Khawaja.
So I've written about that.
And of course he would have thought perhaps he would open, because he had opened in previous tests until he got left out because he was not well or had a back injury, didn't he? But actually they kept faith with Head and Withdrawal as the opening pair and put Khawaja in at 4. So a slightly different position. And incredible really that a great friend of mine who's his key sponsor has said to me that he was planning on Khawaja's swan song and farewell at the SCG, but then obviously not in the team anymore. Not likely to happen. But now he's made 82. Be hard to drop him.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it could be. Who knows?
And what did you think about his innings?
Well, I mean, we've got to say that he was dropped by Harry Brook when he'd only made 5. He had a bit of he chased one outside off stump, and Brook should have caught it. He was possibly standing a bit too close. He looked like he was slightly surprised by it, but it was sort of at chest height, wasn't it? It was not, you'd expect him to take it, and he didn't. And that was quite a big moment in the day. Australia would have been 50 for 3 had that catch been held. But beyond that, Khawaja played really nicely.
As his sort of want, really. I mean, quite wristy, quite stylish, quite aggressive, actually, wasn't he? At various points.
Yeah. I mean, I think I did just sort of write in my piece also that when you end up playing a match in those circumstances, it's a bit of a free hit, because nobody's going to blame you if you get out because you weren't expecting to play. You've sort of got an excuse, but that actually can liberate you, and you can go out and play freely. You haven't sort of had the anxiety perhaps in the 24 hours before the match thinking, can I get some runs, because you didn't think you were playing. And that's how he played, really. He played a bit on memory, perhaps, as well as, So he played freely, really, I thought. And it just shows maybe people should, you can over-prepare, as we've had that word's been used on this tour. You can over-prepare. Maybe he felt liberated, and he played better as a result.
Yeah. So overall, at that first session, England, apart from Archer, were not great. I mean, certainly Brandon Cast bowled some loose stuff. He got hit a little bit, and then the Australians sort of gave their wickets back. So Withdrawal actually was slightly tucked up by a good bouncer from Archer, sort of into his armpit and top edge. So that was a good wicket for England. But then Head had a bit of a loose drive, brilliant catch by Crawley. In fact, apart from that Harry Brook drop, England's fielding today, catching, was excellent, wasn't it? And actually bailed out the bowlers a bit, I think. That was a half volley to Head. He had a big drive. Crawley took a brilliant one under catch in a slightly odd position. And then you had 2 wickets straight after lunch. Labuschagne sort of a lazy kind of little pull shot first ball to Archer, and then a brilliant catch by Cast at mid-wicket off Cameron Green.
Cameron Green, yeah. The Labuschagne wicket was extraordinary. It wasn't a particularly good ball, was it? Bit of a sort of loosener first up after lunch, and he just sort of
ladled it.
I mean, it was like catching practice. And Labuschagne is one of those guys, a bit like Smith, who sells his wicket so dearly and hates to get out, and gives you nothing generally. And he put it on the plate, as you say. It's a the biggest Christmas present is as big as that Christmas tree. That present.
It's a bit incongruous, a Christmas tree in 30 degrees, isn't it? In us English, we're not quite used to it.
So that was amazing. It was extraordinary. Really.
Yeah, and I mean, then I suppose the day unfolded in that sort of vein a bit after that. You felt England might grab the initiative, but they didn't. They didn't bowl tightly enough. They didn't really support Archer. And meanwhile, the batters sort of played all right and then gave their wickets away. Inglis sort of dragged one on. Khawaja, as you said, sort of lofted one out to deep wicket. Quite a good catch by Josh Tongue. I mean, it was just a bit. Cummins was sort of fended one off and a bit tame. I mean, it was a sort of funny sequence of dismissals. But I suppose, to England's credit, they stuck at it. And Will Jacks pressed into service as this sort of, full-time spinner, really, having to bowl quite a lot of overs. I felt he, bowled a loose ball pretty much every over. But let's just hear from Graeme Swann here, because Swann has helped the England spinners over the last couple of years, and obviously a very experienced player himself. Played here at the Adelaide Oval in 2010, bowled brilliantly in the second innings, also caught very well at second slip. So he's had quite an influence on Adelaide Test before. Let's just hear what he thought about Will Jacks' performance today.
I think Jacks has done okay. It's very difficult as a part-time spinner to do the job that Jacks has been asked to do in this test, which is hold down and end in the first innings. Pick up the odd wicket, but hold down and end, go 3.5, 4 and over. It's something that comes with experience, which Jacks unfortunately hasn't got. But that's what England have gone for. Because they've had to strengthen their batting lineup, they're not picking a frontline spinner. So all in all, he's doing a pretty good job in a very testing situation.
And actually, he's created some chances, hasn't he? And he's got one wicket. He's got the wicket of Khawaja as well. So although he's gone for quite a lot of runs, do you feel he's had an influence?
He has had an influence. I just think the fields could be more aggressive. I do not like the deep point. I know that Inglis played a couple of reverse sweeps. Immediately the man goes out. If he's going out, it needs to be halfway. So if there's a top edge, he can take the catch. Just putting him on the boundary, it's defensive fielding, and I don't like that. And that made him play on the leg side to a big open gap at deep mid wicket and get away with a miss hit that should have been a wicket. So sort the fields out, and then we're on the money.
And just one thing about the pitch, it's turned probably more than your test match here in 2010 on the first day. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's fairly dry. There is a grass cover, and I think the seam's just gripping the grass at the minute. It's not really turn or spin, as I'd say, it's just going with the arm. But I think as the game goes on, with the heat, it will turn more and more, especially if Mitchell Starc can create some rough outside the off stump. So I expect spin to play quite a big part in the rest of the test match.
So interesting hearing Swanny's thoughts there. I don't know, I felt Jacks, he looked like a bowler who doesn't bowl long spells, actually. Because, of course, he only mostly plays white ball cricket, where you bowl 4 overs in 2 or 3 spells.
Yeah.
So I felt he lacked any kind of consistency, and he didn't really back up Archer, who was very accurate at the other end.
Yeah, and because it was so hot, Jacks had to bowl, didn't he? Because the other 4 main seamers would have struggled had they been required to bowl more. So it was a difficult situation, really, because Jacks kind of knew. I mean, I suppose you could have turned to Joe Root, but Jacks was going to have to bowl quite a chunk of overs in the day just to give the others some respite in the heat. So yeah, I mean, I guess the thing about Jacks is, do England see in the long term that he could maybe develop into a Moeen Ali type cricketer who's a good batsman, who can probably get runs, hopefully maybe 100 occasionally. Can he develop his bowling with enough in time and investment and become a spin bowling all-rounder, which is the sort of cricketer that England probably want. Right, if they haven't got a specialist that's good enough, which is another whole topic really, then can they find an all-round like him and turn him into a proper, useful utility player?
I suppose Rayan Ahmed would be one example. Yeah. Tom Hartley, another one. I heard Justin Langer on commentary today saying there are no decent spinners in England, or why aren't there any decent spinners? And Graeme Swann sort of refuted that and said there are decent spinners around. They just need a bit more bowling, a bit more experience. We didn't mention Bashir. His sort of situation is sort of parked at the moment. But I think Jacks has got potential. But I think like any spinner, he just needs to bowl more. And Swann himself wasn't really a good test bowler until he played something like 160 first-class games over kind of an 8 or 9 year period. So they do need that bowling. It's very hard for a young spinner to be consistent.
He's got the height.
He's got the height, and he does turn it actually.
Yeah.
And he got
Yeah, he did
a
turn
second
something.
wicket later in the day, Carey. Now, we should talk about Alex Carey because he kept the initiative going for Australia when wickets fell. Of course, he made 100 here. First 100 he's ever made at Adelaide, his home ground. Very popular 100, 56,000 people all on their feet celebrating. But he could have been out on 72. And this is our Betfair exchange today because it was quite a controversial moment. Tell us what happened.
Well, Joffre was bowling. He was after tea. Carey had been playing very well. Got to 70 odd. Had a sort of quite a big sort of drive really at a ball outside off stump. Missed. Well, did he miss? And the umpire Hassan Raza gave it not out. England appealed, and England reviewed. And what happened was that the sound waves graph, if you like, showed a spike, but the spike appeared before the ball passed the bat on the pictures. So the
vision and the sound didn't match.
The vision and the sound didn't match. So the third umpire, Chris Gaffney, couldn't, in all conscience, overturn the on-field umpire and say those two things are connected because they're too far apart.
So the evidence wasn't sufficient to overturn the umpire's not-out decision.
So there was nothing that could have been done. But that said, there was a spike. Therefore, where did the sound come from? There was nothing else. It wasn't like there was a sort of bat hitting the ground situation. There was nothing that could really produce the spike. And in the post-match press conference, Carey spoke, and he admitted that he said, I might have got away with one. He was quite sort of open in a way. He said, he was sort of saying, I don't know for sure, but I think I might have got away with one. David Saker spoke for the England team, and he was quite adamant that this was wrong.
Are we looking at a cheating Aussies story here?
A cheating Alex Carey story, which again is we've had this before, so he's back in the spotlight, unfortunately. But I don't think anyone is particularly blaming him. If there's an anger being vented in any direction, it's towards the technology. The technology that's used in Australia, I think, comes from it's used by the broadcasters, not by Cricket Australia. Comes from New Zealand, I think, and it's not the system that is used in England when, say, Sky Sports cover Test matches, and they use a system called Ultra Edge, and that's part of the Hawkeye family, isn't it? So,
and just to explain how it works, the Hawkeye actually are two vans set up in England. This is two vans set up behind the ground, in the sort of the compound, and one van has, or the gallery has the guys looking at the vision and looking at the computer tracks for Hawkeye, and then there's a couple of other guys who sit there manning the audio, manning the sound feed from the stump mics, and then the computer matches them up, puts them all together. So you'll see sometimes on replays, on DRS, things like that, you'll see several little boxes on screen filming the different technicians doing their bit, but they're all sitting together and they speak to each other, they communicate. Sometimes what you find, I think this has been improved, this system, but sometimes I remember seeing when I sat in the truck that the sound waves didn't match the vision, and that sometimes, and this is a long distance past, the technicians would have to jog the sound position a little bit to match up with the vision. They don't do that anymore, but the problem has always been that sound and vision travel at different speeds, so sometimes they're not quite synced up. If there's an obvious spike, you can kind of make a decision, a clear decision. But if it's a bit of a wiggle and it's not that definite, you're not quite sure what it is. And so it's difficult for the umpire to give that.
So hit it on the side with a hammer. Is that what you're saying? Is that
Yeah.
That's how I tackle most things.
I mean, a big edge is going to be much clearer to a judge than a small edge. And it's interesting, isn't it, that often players don't know they've hit it, do they? I mean, everyone says, I know some players say, oh, yeah, you always know when you hit it, but you actually don't.
Well,
Sometimes you
Pat
definitely
Cummins
don't.
reviewed, he was caught at short leg off a ball that feathered the inside of his bat, whacked into his thigh and popped to short leg. He thought it just, I think he did think that this, he wasn't sort of trying it on. He just thought it whacked him in the thigh and it never hit the bat, but it had. It also touched the bat. So.
And he reviewed it immediately, didn't he?
Exactly.
Which
Suggested
that he didn't think he'd hit that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I suppose in the end, technology is better than no technology, but it's not entirely foolproof. And there are so many things going on around the bat all the time. When a batter has a big swing at the ball, his feet are moving, the wind sometimes you can hear making a noise.
I think the thing with this series is that England feel that they have not been in sync throughout the series.
Right.
It's not like it's a one-off. They think that happened in, was it Perth? I think Jamie Smith was dismissed down the leg side. And
it was Harry Brook as well, wasn't there?
There's off
a glove
one,
down the leg side as well.
So I think, and the Smith one took several minutes for the third umpire to conclude what his answer was. So I think England feel that there is this system. They're not happy with this system, I think, is just what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
But I don't think there's anything to be done. They can just protest to the match referee, but I don't see what anyone can do really. You just hope that the on-field umpire hears everything and sees everything, and maybe if it's out, give it out. In this case, he didn't.
Well, anyway, it gave Carey a reprieve. He probably deserved it. He didn't make any other mistakes. He played very well. He got to his 100, and he was the sort of core of that Australian score in the end, 325 for 8. I suppose England would rue the fact they didn't quite get those last 2 wickets with Lyon and Stark there. They must think. They've just taken the second new ball. They must think. Yeah. They can polish them off in the morning.
They must do.
I mean, Archer, he bowled well, didn't he? I mean, he had a lot of criticism after that spell at the end of the Adelaide Test, when everyone said, why did he bowl so quick when the game was gone? But he was asked to by Stokes, and today, in very hot weather, he sustained his speed and his accuracy well.
Yeah, I'm sure. That, I mean, if they don't finish them off tomorrow with a new ball and fresh after a good night's rest, then that's quite an indictment of them. I would think.
They don't want it to happen like in the Gabba, where they were fielding for practically another day, and such an incentive for the bowlers to put their feet up tomorrow, because, as you say, it's going to be 40 degrees.
And trust that the batsmen don't get out in 40 overs.
But it's Christmas. They might. You never know. They might just give the Australian bowlers a few gifts. Hopefully not. Listen, thank you. I think we should go, because it's just getting dark now. It's time for dinner. And people put their feet up and get ready for tomorrow. As I say, with the Betfair odds, 65% Australia at the moment, 29% England, but maybe there's a case for England playing well. It looks a flat pitch. There is a bit of spin. As Graeme Swann mentioned there, it might turn towards the end of the game. And Nathan Lyon, the Adelaide Oval is his best ground. 63 wickets he's got here in 15 tests at an average of 25. So he's going to be a threat later in the game.
You're making me feel less optimistic by the minute.
Well, England have just got to get a big score, haven't they? They have got to bat last, so they don't want to be chasing more than 200. So they've got to try and get 450 at least, I reckon. And I think on that pitch it's possible. Yeah,
it is possible. They just need to bat with a bit of common sense, I think, is what we're looking for.
But unfortunately, common sense isn't all that common.
It's in short supply here.
Right, listen, thank you anyway. Thanks for listening. Hopefully Simon Mann, not any dispersion on you, but hopefully Simon Mann will be better, and he'll be back tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow to review the second day's play. Thanks for listening.